Hello and welcome back to the MCYT Metazine. I'm Rez, and with me today I've got Will, whose piece covered how videos in the MCYT space are edited to push certain narratives.
Introduce yourself a little bit. Why don't you?
Hi, I'm Will. I got into Minecraft YouTube with the Dream SMP, as I think many people did in, early 2021. And then from there, I watched a lot of Hermitcraft, a lot of the Life series, although I never got quite as into them in terms of fandom. I got somewhat into them. And then I got extremely into Lifesteal, specifically Season 4, though I also watched a lot of other seasons. For a while, I had watched every single Lifesteal video on YouTube. I no longer have. I have fallen behind with the new season, but so it goes. And as I was getting into the Dream SMP, I was also getting an English degree in undergrad. But as I was doing this both in parallel, I was looking at the Dream SMP and Minecraft YouTube as a whole as a fascinating way of doing storytelling, and really wanted to, I hope I explored that some in this magazine. I also, in general, I try to write meta and promote meta and think about how Minecraft YouTube as a whole and different things that it's doing, and it's a really fascinating subject.
I mean, I definitely agree. That's why we're here.
Yep, that's why we're here.
Alright, so your piece concerns the way that editing is used to change or potentially manipulate how a story comes across in the Minecraft YouTube setting.
Yes.
How did you decide on what topic you wanted to analyze for this scene?
I had 7 ideas. I had a lot of ideas going in. I think I was the applicant with the most ideas. But obviously I had to choose one of them fairly early on as my main one, especially because I'm working with an artist. I need them to know what they're drawing. So there were quite a few of my ideas that almost made it. But ultimately, I had a few ideas for this one already, but I didn't already have it partially written. So I would be able to cover a lot of new ground. And I already, again, like I said, I had some ideas. I knew I could draw on some of the non-Minecraft reading. I had some ideas for sources, and I just was excited about it. It was one of the ideas I was most excited about. It was definitely ambitious, but I'm glad I went with it.
What would you most like people to take away from your piece?
All of the ideas about how information can be changed and manipulated, that anything you see that's not raw footage, and honestly sometimes even raw footage, because they can give you some footage and not others, all of that's been edited. It's gone through a layer of people making decisions about what they want you to see and why. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It could just be there's too much footage and they want you to see only the important parts. And that's necessary because we don't have time to watch everything. And this applies not just to Minecraft YouTube. One of the sources I draw on is about the BBC. This applies to a lot of news. We don't have time to watch all the raw footage of everything going on everywhere in the world. But at the same time, you have to keep in mind that whenever you're getting something edited, it's been changed for a reason. And it can be biased, it can be censored. There are a lot of things, even it doesn't even have to be intentional. It can be just they left something out that they didn't think was important, but maybe it would be important to you. And just keeping that in mind, being aware of that.
All right. What would you say you're proudest of in this piece?
Man, that's a hard question. I guess just taking such an ambitious topic, covering 3 different SMPs, and doing it under the word count, because I really struggled with keeping it concise and still preserving everything that I felt was important, but I think I did a fairly good job of that.
Getting into your piece, I like the point you made in the introduction about showing how it felt to be the character of each video. Of course, characters are the ones who drive the story. Do you think in MCYT, it's the story of the server or the characters themselves that draw more attention to a video?
Honestly, I think it's the characters, and maybe not even the characters, maybe to some extent the content creators, because just like most people don't have time to watch VODs, most people don't have the time to watch every single POV of a server. Most people have specific POVs that they watch, and obviously that's not true for everyone. There's, like I said, for a while I watched every lifesteal video that came out. I have a friend who has watched every life series video, but most people are not doing that. Most people are watching the YouTubers they like, who they find funny, who they like their video editing, they like the length of the video, whatever. And you see this across servers. There are some characters who are more popular than others, and those characters then are a lot of times the only characters that they watch the POVs of, and that shapes how they see the story. And that's not the story of a server, that's just the story of that character, because, I mean, that's kind of the whole thing with, I mean, a lot of Minecraft YouTube, that each POV is inherently limited.
Getting back to our questions, your piece compares how lifesteal VODs edit dialogue to how creators in the Life series do something similar, and both for like a similar narrative purpose. Do you think there's a distinct difference in how and why this is done between the servers, or is it relatively a similar process?
There's definitely a lot of overlap, especially in what I talked about, because I considered talking about more things, but ultimately I have kind of the demons about storytelling that I have, and that's what I have a lot of thoughts about, a lot of citations about, so on and so forth. I would say the different fandoms treat it somewhat differently.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Talk about that.
In lifesteal fandom, it's very much talked about as lying when creators do this, especially, at least when I was in lifesteal fandom, especially since fans have direct access to the VODs, they can compare. And you see this some, like in the Loreful Good series that I linked, that does like analysis of the Life series and of comparing specific dialogue between two different episodes. And it does work to treat what actually happened as the real canon, and then as like what's in the videos. If people cut things out, if people dub over it, that's lying within that context. But as I did research for the zine, and I'll talk about this more in a different question, I think, there's a lot more that Life series can kind of get away with, isn't the right word, because it's just a different understanding of canon from the fandom, I think, in that because they don't have the VODs to refer back to, the videos are much more leaned on as canon.
While we're on the subject of canon,
Yes,
and how canon works, the Dream SMP notoriously played pretty fast and loose with canon, not only in the editing of videos, but in the case of certain unfortunate deaths being officially labeled as non-canon by the creators. How would you say that that kind of situation plays into your argument?
okay, so I have a controversial opinion,
Ooh.
which is that every death on the Dream SMP happened.
Okay.
Yeah. I will say that many of them are not canon in the sense of canon lives, which is a system that got established not at the beginning of the Dream SMP. They got established several months in.
Yeah.
Many of them were not considered canon in that sense, in that obviously creators died more than 3 times on the server and were still allowed to play as not a ghost. But you have to keep in mind that, like, this was retconned in, and especially early on, there are a lot of deaths that matter, that affect the plot, that clearly happened, that are labeled as non-canon deaths. And I'm fine with them being, like, not canon deaths, TM, with capital letters, whatever. But they clearly are lowercase c canon in that something happened there. Like, Technoblade killing Tommy in the pit is a non-canon death. That happened.
That one is usually understood in actually what I've seen as a pretty long tradition in Minecraft YouTube, which is that certain in-game deaths are regarded as injuries or being knocked unconscious.
Yes. And, like, to some extent, though, like, even canon deaths are often regarded as being injuries. Like, they don't permanently kill the person who has a canon death. They leave them with these, like, fanon injuries. And I think that you can say that, like, I get that there's fanon for this in terms of they got into a fight but no one died. I think that to some extent this is fair in that, like, that's how all deaths were being interpreted up until the canon live system was introduced. But I think that it's anachronistic to say that, like, Tubbo's death at the festival day was canon in a way that Tommy's death on festival day wasn't, when they both impacted the story in similar ways. And I also think that, in general, like, there is a thing where non-canon deaths are often used to mean things, even within the context of the Dream SMP. Like, you get stuff like Phil. Phil has one canon life and is playing in hardcore mode, right?
Of course.
So is Technoblade, in that
Yes.
Technoblade also only has one canon life. Phil, literally, over the course of the Dream SMP, never dies, other than one death to lag. But literally does not have any non-canon deaths. And Phil being in hardcore mode and literally never like taking that very, very literally of if I die once, that will, if it's not like an accidental death, it will automatically be canon, says something to me about his character and like the context he comes from, of like coming from that hardcore background out of character. And similarly, like, you see other characters like being very reckless with their life, having a lot of non-canon deaths as a result. That's a lot of times being used as a character note, and that can like mean something about their character. And so while you can say that like they aren't canon in terms of how should we interpret them as deaths, I think they are definitely some variety of canon in that many of them happened in some way, shape, or form within the story and mattered to the canon.
I see what you mean. On that note, I think about various times that Ranbu had died on the server, and which ones of those counted as canon, if anything counted as canon.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the answer there a lot of times is, does a content creator want to kill their character off or not?
Oh, yeah.
Because if they want to kill their character off, then they can go back and say, oh, actually, XYZ deaths were canon deaths, and so this next death I have is my last death, goodbye. Or they can say, I don't want to kill my character off, so even though I'm on my last, I was previously understood to be on my last life, I'm actually going to say one of those isn't a canon death because I want to die again.
Or you can just do the Jack Manifold difference and say, nuh-uh.
Just coming back. Yeah, there's a lot of revival.
Crawled out of hell, he's fine.
Yeah, so a lot of times it's just like, what do the content creators like want to have been the case in like a specific moment?
Yeah. Speaking of something that actually came up in your Dream SMP section.
Yes.
Do you think the boundaries of what is and isn't shown in MCYT content have shifted over the years to be edgier or maybe even safer? Or do you think creators have yet to find a way to really push the envelope in terms of darker storytelling for edited MCYT content?
Honestly, this is a hard one for me to answer just because I watch different things. I watch different creators. Some creators that I previously watched have moved on. And, like, it's not really fair to compare Tommy Innit to Grian in terms of, like, how edgy they're being. You know, because they're operating in different contexts for different audiences. And I also I don't watch every server. Like, I didn't watch the QSMP, which was hugely influential.
And got pretty dark.
Yeah. And not just dark, but also I try to bring this up. Also in terms of LGBT content, especially sexual LGBT content. But also, like, I don't know if that made it into their edited videos. I didn't watch their edited videos. I don't even know if they have them. Like, that's just not an SMP I followed. And MCYT is such an incredibly, incredibly broad spectrum in that, like, the guy making, like, tutorials on how to make redstone farms is making Minecraft YouTube. It's just such a broad spectrum that it's hard for me to judge, like, has it gotten edgier? Has it gotten safer? Am I just watching different guys? I don't know. There's definitely, at any point in time, I would say you can find some people who are being edgier, some people who are being safer. And it's hard for me to judge, as someone who doesn't watch everyone, how those ratios have changed.
That's fair. Is there anything from this piece that you'll be taking with you into the future, whether that be for future Minecraft YouTube content, meta, academia in general? What do you think?
So honestly, I did a lot of research about censorship when I was doing the Dream SMP section, and not all of that even made it in. And I feel like it really gave me a better understanding of censorship and how it functions.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more of it is self-censorship than, like, the government says, don't talk about this topic, don't write about this topic. But it's not really possible for the government to censor everything. They can pass laws, but it's really, really hard to censor everything. And so instead what you do is, like, you censor a couple high-profile people, and you rely on everyone else to just censor themselves for you. And a lot of censorship also that I learned doing this is very vague. There aren't clear rules. This is true of the YouTube terms of service. And there aren't clear rules, there aren't clear laws. It's not, don't talk about this topic. It's just, I heard that if you talk about this, you'll get demonetized, you'll get disappeared, something will happen, you don't want it to happen. Just stay away from that topic. I don't know what exactly is what causes the censorship, but something is. And it's like that kind of by design. And that's, again, like something I didn't expect going in. And something that I'll be taking with me forward as like an understanding of how the world works.
That's fair. That's fair. And last question as we get towards the end of this. Is there anything else from either the process or the piece itself that you'd like to share? Any details you want to point out or other things that didn't make it in?
2 things from the process. First thing is I actually didn't know about the retcon deaths in the Life series before I started writing this piece.
Huh.
I've watched a lot of Life series. I watched at least a few POVs of every Life series, and all of them I've watched at least 2 POVs. But I don't watch their streams, and I dabble in the fandom, but I'm not as deep in it as I am with Lifesteal and the Dream SMP. And so that was something I discovered that changed the piece a lot, because that was a pretty big one to find out about. And then another one is actually just kind of a story from my life, which is that this zine has been taking place in parallel to my own Minecraft roleplay.
Yeah?
The first time this came up is that I actually found out who my artist was because I was watching it was on like the day that my teammate betrayed me, and I was watching a recording one of my allies took about that, and my artist, Cogmented, is like, oh, I just got into the metazine. This is the pitch that I'm paired with, and reads out my pitch. It was just a very surreal experience, and it was kind of a cool story. And then also, as part of my own Minecraft roleplay, as part of Divorce Steel, he also mentions later on in the server a conversation that I had on the Metazine server when talking about apocalypses and some thoughts I have on how they're treated in different servers. And he references this in character to try and understand my character better. And that was just like a really cool thing to discover because we aren't allowed to stream snipe, so I didn't learn that until after season 1 of Divorce Steel ended. But that was a really cool thing to discover. And even though it wasn't directly part of the process of writing it, it sort of was, in that it was like on the Metazine server. It was, I don't know, it was a really cool thing to see, like, it intersect with my own Minecraft roleplay. Like, my meta thoughts have now crossed back over into, I don't know, that was a neat experience.
All right. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for contributing your piece for the Metazine.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap this up?
You can find me at Irrealisms on Tumblr or 75 Hearts on AO3.
And there you have it. You can read Will's piece and the other pieces for the MCYT Metazine when it releases. We will see you then.